Okay, so today we're going to get started here on a webinar. So I want to welcome everybody that is attending. So welcome aboard. Let's talk a little bit about the topic today. First off, we're going to have a thing called "How do we relaunch?" and why is this relaunch important, or why is it not as important as most people think? So before I even get started, there's probably a lot of questions on what should we do to relaunch. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a comparative in terms of the safety that you have. You, of course, should have some signage, something on your website about being coronavirus or COVID-19 compliant. There's an entire PDF that you can download from this webinar, which is an ADA toolkit. And you may already have it, but it has some good suggestions on there about your social distancing at reception, as well as in the back. But the primary protocol that I want you to think about is the importance of COVID-19 versus earlier training and compliance that was put in upon the discovery and the implementation of HIV and SARS virus. Now, the HIV is probably 50 times more important in terms of a contractual disease because it's an autoimmune disease that destroys your immune system that there's no cure for, or minimally uh, cures that aren't completely conceptually fully done yet. That being said, the office has already been through a transition of OSHA compliance with gloves, masks, lab coats, and what have you. And I can tell you something that HIV is no more or no less contagious than any other type of virus because it's done by contact, hands, what have you. It's not just bloodborne, but nevertheless, you already have a good protocol in the office, so don't think that you need to do something that's 50 times more important. That's in the mind of the press that's had a bunch of histrionics and uh, I don't know, I can call them scare tactics or what have you. So, in terms of relaunching, let's take it up for a moment. The relaunch, as you can see on the screen here, I have a thing called a 5-year plan. The reason I have this up here is because the coronavirus is a very short time window in the career of your dental practice. You have been there for years, you're going to be there for years to come. Most people in business, as a business concept, work almost solely on today, tomorrow, the next month. And of course, the amount of noise that's occurred with COVID 19 and just even a normal practice is so on a daily basis that it prevents you from accomplishing something in the future. Thus, the 5-year plan. Now, let me give you a description of this. At the end of the day, when you walk into your practice, um, you're hit with a thing called noise, and that noise is just noisy. So, that being said, you arrive at the office and you have a staff member that doesn't show up, or staff member that quits, or you miss your lunch, or you miss your going home on time, and you get home at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and the amount of noise during the day from staff members asking questions, they ran out of supplies, how can we get this? It prevents you from looking at an overview of the practice unless you have a plan in place. I can't overemphasize this. Any plan is better than no plan. And a series of steps or action steps to focus on the key areas of any business are pretty critical, which is what this is about today. This is an educational webinar to really put you a little bit into the future. I know you have an emergency now, and there's probably funds that aren't available, and cash flow is down, and there's many different things you're going to go through. At the end of the day, just get your practice relaunched, get back to work as soon as you can, stop listening to the news, just keep yourself safe, the staff safe, do your normal stuff, and everybody's going to be fine. Um, at the end of the day, what does this 5-year plan do? And I'm emphasizing this because there's really only 4 areas of your practice that if you focus on them within a 5-year plan, you are going to accomplish something. How is it that after years of being in practice, a practice can have the same number of hygiene days? They have 2 days, a hygienist quits, or they have 4 days for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, or longer. That's just one area, by the way. Let's talk about some others because this is what's going to happen down the road. So, what is a 5-year plan? I'm going to sort of take you through just a platform that takes a little bit of time and takes some information from yourself, which myself and Majid and some of our account reps will, at the end of this webinar, you will see we're opening up in May and June. We have office visits we're going to do this relaunch. So it's important that you, at the end in your survey, if you want to have us come, we're coming. But we have a limited time. A lot of people are going to want us to come, so just say yes or no at the end. It's a way to relaunch your practice. There's some things we will modify on your database mailers as well as your brochures if you have brochures, and that's simply a message on the back of your brochure or your database mailer on the next ones we do, which will simply say COVID-19 compliant. We'll send you a copy of it, but there's not going to be a whole lot of back and forth because we have to change every single client, which is okay. It'll be a nice message. It'll be in compliance with basically what the American Dental Association says to do, that your office is compliant with the safety regulations of COVID-19. So that being said, let's take a look at the first sign here. This is an example. This has been done for quite some years. This one that I'm showing you on is a client of ours. You may know her. Her name is Valentina down in San Diego, California. This is about three years old, and the progress that she has had is phenomenal. More progress in the last 3 years than she had in the prior 17 years of being in practice, or 18 years. So what does the 5-year plan entail? What type of information, marketing-wise, do we need to launch a plan or a series of steps to get you from where you're at to where you want to go in the next 4 or 5 years? And so this is an example. You'll see here, this is, I'm real rapidly, I don't want you to read this. It just give you a concept of full demographics of your area so we know what are the geofence areas, what are the demographics of your people, how much has the community grown, where is it going in the next 3 to 4 or 5 years. Many places are expanding in terms of population, which means there'll be more patients. So that being said, it gives you an example. There's demographic research. This next one simply shows you Valentina happens to be in a Tri-City area. It shows her geofence. All down here on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's a circle around this geofence. It's probably a good 3 mile to 4 mile radius around her office that encompasses quite a few people, 32,000 different people. That's a nice geofence. Most offices in 1.5 miles to 2 miles are about 15,000, maybe 18, 20,000. So this next page here just shows rapidly an analysis based off of the numbers of your office. How many new patients are coming in and what's the size of your database. And from there you can do a formula. It's a simple, I'm going to call it a CFO or a corporate finance officer formula, which we've known for really since almost 2003. And that being said, any office, any business can do this. Every business in the world that has a CFO does it. We just end up doing it for you. And you'll see it gives the projections over here on the right-hand side here. It shows from 2017 to 2022. This office in 2017 did 2.7 million. By 2022, it'll be at 4.7 million. She's already on target. In 2020, she'll reach, even with COVID-19, she'll reach close to the $4 million mark. So she's got some catch up to do like everybody does because we've lost a month or a month and a half. But so be it. It just means we get smarter. What does the 5-year plan do? Now take a look at this diagram because this is pretty critical. What are you trying to accomplish? Quite honestly, what are you trying to accomplish in your practice today? How long have you been there? What's the largest situation you're trying to handle? I'm going to cover those 4 situations so they're very focused. They're focal points. So that being said, if you look at the diagram, here's a sort of a comical looking diagram. and it shows a dentist handcuffed to this office, which most practitioners are. Now, what does that handcuff mean? That handcuff means a lot. It's interesting because the handcuff means that if you go to leave your office, okay, and you're gone for 2 weeks and you go to Hawaii or skiing or whatever you do. I was talking to lovely Nisha Patel out there in Texas, and her and her husband were going out to Park City, Utah. And of course, there's always a reservation about going because there's you're going to be gone a week, so you lose a week's production. How much are you producing in a week, or 10 days, or 2 weeks? If you go for 2 weeks, you're producing $80,000 a month. That's $40,000 in lost revenue plus the cost of the vacation. So how often do you go? That's the handcuff. And the other handcuff is the operative dentistry that you have to do every single day, day in, day out, year after year. What happens in an office because of the noise, and we've all experienced it. We don't like it. But you walk in, and what happens is the minutes in a day turn into hours. And the hours turn into days. And the days turn into weeks. Sort of fascinating. And those weeks turn into months. And the months turn into years. And the years turn into a decade or 15 years. And they're gone like that without a plan in place. And this is a disaster because what are you trying to do? You're married to these operatories. How do we release this? Look at our diagram. How do we release the handcuffs from this doctor to do a transition so you're not tied down in this operatory? Now, anybody can do this. Anybody. You don't have to be 4 or 5 days a week working 8, 10 hours a day, missing your lunch hours and what have you. If the office has the exact right focal points put in place, which is what I'm going to cover here. It's not a plan that gets you booming tomorrow. It's just a plan. It's already been documented. It already works. I'll show you some results of it because we have plans that I've been doing this for quite some years. We began implementing it in Viva almost 3 to 4 years ago, and it's had spectacular response. So that being said, let's take a look. What is this? What do we address? What are the 4 focal points? So there's 4 areas that stop the leakage or the lost revenue or the lost patients. I'm not even talking about getting new patients. You'll always do that. You have to pay money for that. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes paying their money for SEOing. Nobody likes paying their money for postcards. In fact, they don't like paying Viva. No kidding. Now, that being said, you actually don't have an option because you have to get new patients. So, of course, you bite the bullet and you go ahead and do it. But regardless of that, the amount of revenue lost inside the office that's already there is what we want to stop. Overhead, overtime, supplies, all these different things, the leakage out the back door, the lost call conversion at the front desk. Let's take a look at them. Here's the 4 things. The first one is called low call conversion. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. Most doctors have no concept of what they're actually losing there. Lose 4 or 5, 6 patients a month. What does it happen to be? That's area number 1. Now, I'm going to cover it a bit more in a moment, but remember there's 4 items. This is area number 1. What's the next area? The next area is lost case acceptance. This is your treatment coordinator. This is the team acting as a sales team. I mean, the people are already coming in. What if you could increase? They're already there, the new patients. If you can increase the number of people accepting treatments with better training and better servicing, then all of a sudden there's more revenue. They're already there, so we're trying to stop that loss. That's area number 2. What's area number 3? You've all heard it before because I've said it many times. And that area is area number 3, which is the retention and the loss of your patients, which I'll cover a bit more in detail. That is a huge one. It's in the millions in actual fact over a period of years. And the last one, which I've never covered before, this is your overhead control loss, the loss of revenue from overtime, loss from someone not watching the supplies, loss from, I could go on and on. What are the standards in the industry? If you don't have those standards, then you won't know. Period. And the amount that's lost there is not in the thousands of dollars. It's not in the fives or tens of thousands. It's in the 50s, $100,000 a year, simply because there's a lack of a controller or control points within the office. So let's take up each of these. Let's take a look. What do these four things do? These four things are controlled by having a plan in place, which is on the screen here, that's the 5-year expansion plan. Those are four simple things that you can forget everything else and just have program steps for each of the one areas. Area number one is reception, which I'm going to cover here. Here's your first area. This is your call conversion. Call conversion is far more important than you can imagine. This is your communication, your new patient experience coming into the office. So what is that? Well, every lost patient of conversion is over $2,000. Look at the diagram. If you knew the exact loss here. Now, I had an office last June or July where we had every call recorded. And in 1 month's time, they lost 41 new patient calls that were price inquiries, unknown to the doctor until we listened to the audio files. Well, the average transaction value in that office for the first year for any new patient was right around $3,100. Well, do the math on it. What's $3,100 times 41 patients being lost in a month? Even if we only recovered half of them, well, that's only $120,000. If we only recovered 20 of them and we would have converted them, you're looking at $60,000 a month. Well, that's $720,000 a year. Well, all of a sudden, this becomes pretty critical. So all we're trying to do is shut the door on the lost conversion. That's all we're doing. So the focal points that we want to cover, which we have some of these already in your office, but take a look at it. Your care to share is important for every new patient. Your new patients coming in is a care to share personal referral, which is the largest and best case acceptance you're ever going to have over an advertised public. The next one is your database mailers. The database mailers, you may not understand or totally grasp the value, but your communication, the patient communication to your database, is the most critical aspect of your patient experience that you will ever have. Never stop communicating to your database, particularly going back into your relaunch. Your high-valued patient communication, telephone calls for reactivation, reactivation through database mailers, patients coming into the office. The database mailers give you referrals of the patients that are at home, or if somebody forgets to pass out an internal care to share card, keep mailing them, because your patient database mailers will also get you patient referrals in addition to the patients coming back. And the next one down here you'll take a look at is actually reviews. Now, this has become more critical, which we have plenty of research on this in the last, 4 to 5 years. In most offices, they start reviews, they stop reviews, you have to have reviews that are a positive experience to enhance your referral base. This is what elevates it. If you have 30, 40 reviews, you need 50, 100, 150, 200, 300, and they need to be good. There's many platforms out on reviews that are superlative beyond belief, which I'll take up in another webinar, but nevertheless, reviews are there. We've already researched it. It's an area for your focal point for area number one, which is your reception and your call conversion. Your next one is area two, and area two is sales. Now remember, we have the 4 points. The 4 points are the 4 areas of loss. First is the area of reception, that call conversion. The next one, the person comes in, we now want to sell them. That's area number 2. Now, if you take a look at this diagram, I'm going to circle the money down here at the bottom. Nobody likes this, but the money being lost at the bottom is far more than what you would imagine. The average benchmark across the country for patients that do not accept treatment, that are sitting in the files, is 55 to 62%. Now get a load of that. Means there's more revenue sitting in the charts than there is of a new patient walking in the front door. Now, I'm not telling you don't have a new patient walk in the front door. Obviously, that would be stupid. But that's why retention becomes so important. But at the same time, we can sell more if you have a team activity. I'll cover the focal points in a moment. And if you look at the right here, if we can train the staff on the basic elements of sales as a team, and we name each one of them: the hygienist, the assistant, the treatment coordinator, the doctor. They're a team. They huddle every single morning. If they don't do this, go ahead, give it to the doctor, have him look at every single patient. That patient should be sold before they walk into the hygiene department on a returning patient. If they never had the crown done or the implant, or they have perio, that thing should be sold. It should be coordinated with the hygiene coordinator. It should be coordinated with the treatment coordinator. When you walk in, it's sold on the book and the patient's appointed. It doesn't require the doctor to go in there. Surprisingly enough, that's not Greg Hughes talking. That's in many articles. A gorgeous article by Gordon Christensen, who talks about the team effort to get sales going or treatment acceptance to its highest level. It's a team activity. So what are the focal points of area number 2? And those are train the living daylights out of your treatment corner. Damn it, get her trained. And then have her train everybody else in the office. Have them huddle every single morning. It takes 10 minutes to do it. A morning that happens where you have a hygienist who has 8 patients in a day. Before she starts, the chart should be opened up and say, on any recall patient, the first question that you ask is, what service is not complete on that patient? And that's the first thing brought up by the treatment coordinator and by the hygienist, and it's addressed to the patient so we can get that person closed either that day or to come back for the next appointment. So that online training is pretty critical. The next one is increase your positive reviews of the patients in the office. Again, I talked about it a bit earlier, but we have a couple platforms that actually do that. You want to do this immediately and constantly. Get your reviews up. When you do any promotion in your office, I don't care who it is, what you're doing. I don't care if it's online AdWords, if it's SEOing, if it's postcards. It doesn't matter what the hell it is. They're going to go to your website. They all go there. So don't think that all your clicks on your website is what's causing your marketing, because if you're doing postcards, that's where they go, and they're going to look at your reviews. So reviews are pretty critical. And then the next thing down here at the bottom, which is we have focused this on the last year, which is how do you raise the new patient experience to be, 5-star? There's a whole course and lesson, online course that actually covers that in detail. But it's almost like you have to have a concierge in the office. A new patient welcome letter that goes out with every single patient that walks in that office. The day they walk in, a new patient welcome letter is sent off to the patient the moment they walk in. You want that new patient experience to elevate your care to share. Pretty critical. So what's the next area? So we have, remember the 4 areas. Area number 1 is obviously reception and call conversion. It has some new patient experience in there as well. Area number 2 is your sales as a team. Area number 3 is retention. Now realize this is what the 5-year plan is going to focus on. So you've heard me talk a lot about hygiene. We've had, with people that have a hygiene coordinator, we've had more than spectacular results on it. The plan I showed you on the San Diego office, honestly, after 20 years in practice or 21 years in practice, had 1 full-time hygienist. They're now at 3 full-time hygienists. What that does to the office is I don't know. I can't quite describe it. It has a dynamic that's almost immeasurable. You almost can't measure it. Why? Because if you have a number of hygiene days being increased, which is the focal point on this next point over here, take a look at it. The focal point is we want to increase the hygiene days through retention and reactivation. Why? Because the number of incomplete treatment that can come back to accept treatment is there. When your new patient base is up and down by the month, your hygiene department keeps the office stable. This is one of the key factors that removes the damn handcuffs. So you have to have a hygiene coordinator in place. What does it do? How do we do this? Now, I talk a lot about the mission statement. Some of you have them on the wall in your operatories in reception. But let me give you a short, about 7 to 8 minute video here that I prepared before I did this webinar to really give some understanding, because what we're doing, if you look at this at the top, we're repositioning dentistry to wellness. Wow, is that timely or what? Now, wellness is critical. Now, most people don't know why are we doing the repositioning. So let's take a look at this. Here's a short video that gives you the power of repositioning, which is done with public relations, and positioning. So here it is. This lesson is a continuation of the mission statement and its purpose and its powerful embedment into the dental office. It's so important to understand why do we have a mission statement and why did we choose the mission statement that we have. The mission statement we have, as you'll remember, is umbrellaed under the term wellness. You'll remember the mission statement talks about we're here basically to care for you, to keep you well for a lifetime and help reduce your dentistry through education, to eliminate your dentistry for a lifetime. And that comes from the word doctor. The word doctor comes from the Latin word docere, which means to teach or to know or to teach one to know. How come we have that mission statement? So to understand this and the scope of it, I'm going to cover a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to cover a subject called logic, which most people in college don't take. But logic is critical as to how and why this mission statement came about. Once we talk about why it came about, then we're going to talk about how to embed the mission statement throughout the entire practice, which is a critical element in terms of retention of your patients and your consumers. Remember, we're talking about retention here. If we can retain consumers in this office, the office will organically grow. Not maybe. It will go away from your standard office across the country that has 3 or 4 days of hygiene for 7, 8, 9 years in a row without ever adding one day. How is that? That's damn near impossible. So let's take a look at how come and how can we retain the consumer to add more hygiene days, more hygiene revenue, and at the end of the day, how do we remove the handcuffs from this practitioner? Because if you have hygiene days, your income has a limitless ceiling. In fact, it doesn't have a ceiling. So that being said, let's go into the subject as to why and how we came about with this mission statement. So foremost, let's cover the subject of logic. Now, the word logic itself is umbrellaed under the term reason. If people knew how to reason, the ability to have arguments or no arguments or understanding is elevated. So let's take a look at how people think, because you're marketing your practice, and at the same time, we're putting a mission statement in that elevates the retention of your consumer. So on a logic scale or a reason scale, if you take a look at the scale I'm going to throw up on the screen here, this scale is, let's say, in the middle is 0, and it can go up and up and up almost infinitely. But on this scale, let's just arbitrarily say that it goes to 10. So from 0 to 10, if you look at this scale, let's ask you a couple of questions. The question I'm going to ask you, almost every person will answer exactly the same. If you look at this scale, anything can go on it, right or wrong, beauty or ugly. If I said something is ugly, it could be at 0. If it's beautiful, it could be at 10. Something that's very, very right could be at 10 or above 10. Something that's very wrong could be at 0 or below 0. So let's take an example of this so we really understand this scale. If somebody is driving to work and they see a young man crossing somebody across the street and they're in a wheelchair, and he's stopping the traffic, you go, wow, that's pretty benevolent. That's good. Let's put that at a 5 or a 6 on this scale. Somebody else comes along and they're pretty well off and they're a philanthropist and they want to donate. So they find a area that they are interested in, and let's say it happens to be education in South Africa. And so what they do is they donate $4 to $5 million to open up schools, supply books and materials and what have you for the students to rid the area of crime in the crime-ridden areas. And of course, over a period of 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, all of a sudden you have more literate people and the crime rate decreases. That's above somebody crossing the street. Instead of a 5, that might be an 8 or a 9. That's pretty benevolent. So let's go to the other end of the scale. Let's take it and let's say it goes from 0 to minus 10. So you have minus 10 to plus 10. So let's take the subject of right and wrong. Let's say somebody goes to work and they take a pen from the office and they put it in their purse and they take it home. Well, that's sort of a negative. Not a big deal, but if you have ever bought big pens for your office, you'll know that you buy 20 of them. They're all gone in 3 days and you can never find the damn things, right? So anyways, the person finds the pen at home and they go, oh, well, I don't make that much money anyway, and it's only a pen, so I'll keep it. But that's actually a negative, a very minor comparison to stealing. But it's not really stealing, but it's sort of stealing. Let's say it's a -1. Somebody else comes late to work the next day, and they're working in a dental office, and they're running 30 minutes behind. So they call a fellow staff member, and they ask the fellow staff member, hey, could you clock me in? I'm running 30 minutes late. And so the other person says, sure, and they clock him in. Well, that's like a -4 or 5 because that's actually stealing. It's stealing 30 minutes of time. The person is late. Somebody else clocks him in. So there's 2 people involved in that negativity. So that's negative. So by the way, that can get worse and worse and worse. Somebody else steals a car in society. Well, that's a felony. That's way down there. By the way, how bad can it get? Somebody can murder somebody. Somebody in a world war could kill 6 million Jews. Well, that's way, way down there. Now, going up to good, we already talked about. So let's take a look and go back to the subject of dentistry. Why am I talking about this scale? Anything could go on this scale, good or bad, which I gave an example of. Beauty, ugly, many things can go on it. But let's talk about life importances. What's important in life? And let's put it on the scale. So at the very top of the scale, we're going to go from 0 to 10. And I'm going to ask you a question because everyone in the globe, literally in society and every culture, the thing that's at number 10 is always 2 things. And the 2 things that are up there every time is number 1, their family, and right along with it and parallel to it is their job. And the job is there to support the family. So that's right at the very top of the scale. If they don't have that, then all the things below that can't hardly exist. So that's numero uno for almost everybody. So, okay, let's say that you want to go out to dinner with some friends and go to a movie. Well, that's pretty cool. And from 0 to 10, that's like a 7 or an 8. Or you go to a nice party with some friends, or let's say you go on a cruise with your family, or you go to Hawaii with your family and you have a nice vacation. Well, that's up there. That's pretty up there. That's pleasure moments. It's fun. You get to converse with your family members, and that's way up there. Okay, let's say you get your hair done and you get it streaked and you really like it. Well, that's pretty up there too. That's like a 6 or a 7. You get your nails done. Well, that's a 6, 7, or an 8. That's pretty cool. You have nice looking nails. You get a massage. That's pretty up there. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Now let's go into the mind of the consumer and let's ask this question. Now you're going to go to a dentist. So you tell me on a scale of 0 to 10 where that ends up. Because it's not at 10, it's not at 9, it's not at 8, it's not at 7, 6, 5, or 4. The concept of going to a dentist is not a pleasure moment. It's not like going to Disneyland. It's not like going out to the movies, getting a massage, getting your hair done, your nails done, or anything like that. Going to the dentist has certain mental images that the consumer has. Let's talk about what are they? Where is it on this scale? It's probably somewhere around a 1 or a 2. It's not pleasurable. So when people think of going to a dentist, they think, oh my gosh, it's painful. They think about, I have to get injections if I have something wrong. It's going to be costly for me. Is the doctor going to tell me more of what I need than I actually do? Am I going to get ripped off? Do I need to get a second opinion? These, by the way, that I'm mentioning are consumer surveys. They aren't my thoughts. This is in the mind of your patients in your geographic area where they come to your office. So they mandate going to a dentist when they have pain. When they have pain, they want to get out of pain. So that overrides the negativity. So they're going to call for an emergency visit. Some people go to get their teeth cleaned to maintain so they don't have pain in the future. But nevertheless, look where dentistry falls on this scale. It's somewhere between a 1 or a 2 in most people's mind. Those are consumer surveys. They're out on your ADA website. You can find them. So what does the mission statement have to do with this scale of importance? And I can tell you that it has everything to do with it. So we're going to take up a subject here on this subject of logic, and we're going to, the subject in marketing and public relations is called public relations and positioning. How do you position your office so you position against what's in the mind of your consumer?
Your consumer has pain, expensive, second opinion, cost, all these different things, needles, all those things are in his mindset or her mindset. How can we reposition that?
So that being said, your database mailers also we repositioned everything in the office in terms of your database mailers, the messages in there, and your welcome letters on your new patient experience. They're all integrated, and these are the things that if we can do and educate the staff, honestly, in the next 3, 4, or 5 years, you're going to be where you want. With these handcuffs will begin coming off. So let's take a look at the last area. Now remember, we have 4 areas. And the 4 areas, area number 1, you remember, is call conversion. Area number 2 is sales. Area number 3, remember, is retention or the hygiene department. Area number 4 is a new one. And this area number 4 is your how do you gain control of the expenses and to cut the waste in the office? So we've put in an entire protocol to help educate the doctor. There's a lot of educational online videos now, which is that really covers the structure of the office and how do you put a controller in on your budget without having a controller. Again, this takes a series of steps and programs and what have you. And what are the focal points on this one? Take a look at this. We're simply trying to stop losses in 4 areas. Stop the loss at reception. Stop the loss at sales. Stop the loss in retention, the people going out the back door, which is 90% of them. Stop the loss of the wastage of the money that you're already making that could go into your own reserves, your own 401k, your own financial freedom. So here's the focal points of the last area, which is area 4. It really covers the 4 areas, which is call conversion, treatment acceptance, building the hygiene days, and converting the wasted funds into profit. How do we do this? Because on a monthly basis, there's an analysis of each of those areas to stop that, which requires some information and really an analysis so that we can slowly close the door on each one of these. Actually, quite simple to do. It's a program. And at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? Here you are sitting out there in the office. Unfortunately, we had this stupid histrionics and emotional fear mechanism with COVID-19. And at the end of the day, we're going to relaunch. But what are we trying to what are we trying to focus you on? This is a message just from me to you. And my message to you is honestly, look at the long term. You'll get over this like everybody will get over it. But the long term is the more important aspect. The future is always more important than today or yesterday. Because today you're just in noise. If you can get the attention in the future, your attention units, then you can begin to grow. So what are we trying to achieve? Well, those are the 4 things we're trying to achieve. We're trying to stop the loss at each of those 4 critical areas of loss in a practice. They're incredibly evaluated. Just trust me, they're evaluated. And if we have a series of steps or small programs to put in place, you're golden beyond belief. So this is really what we're trying to do. This is sort of one of the last slides here. Freedom. What is that? Well, freedom is whatever you want to define it as. You may want to work 3 days a week. You may want to work 5 days a week. You may want to pick and choose the things you want to do. You may want to have just be the manager and have other doctors work for you. How is that achievable? It's achievable so easily. I can give you story after story where doctors for 25 years didn't think they could do it. And then 2.5 years later, in fact, Valentina is very close to that. When her daughter graduates from Loma Linda, bless her heart, Valentina down in San Diego is a hard-working lady. I happen to know her close because I used her as a pilot. But she'll be there, and she'll be a happy lady. In fact, she's already on her road there. This is what we're trying to break loose from these handcuffs. These handcuffs they will wear on you. You'll go home thinking, like, what can I do to get there? You might have been thinking about it, and you might have even went into apathy about it, but it's completely achievable. So at the end of the day, I want to thank you so much. This has been for you. I had this webinar. It's one of our first webinars, by the way, so maybe my tools aren't totally in place, but nevertheless, I have some survey questions at the end. The reason I showed this is because, like I said at the beginning, It's really important. We're going to be launching in the next, I don't know, week to 10 days, and we're going to visit offices to do a relaunch. So if you want to visit and you want to know about things, we'll come. We have limited resources like everybody because a lot of our doctors are relaunching. So in Southern California, we can come almost immediately. But by the end of May, we're going to open up the rest of the U.S. because all the flights will be back into place, what have you. So it's a survey. Simply answer yes or no. If you want to actually have us come, we would love to come, and we'll actually figure out what can we do to put this plan in place and give you a longer term objective and goal. That's really our plan for you. I don't know if it's anybody else. It's certainly my personal plan for any doctor. My heart is on my sleeve for all the hardworking dentists. I can tell you that you're probably going through some tribulations like anybody. Our own business is that way. Because of the shutdown, you'll have a momentum that you need to get, that you need to take off. And that momentum, I can give you a couple of tips in advance. Get on the damn phone and start calling those patients in all day long. You just reactivate. Get all your database mailers going right now. Get your external promotion going right now. Do not wait. Do not wait a moment. It takes weeks for promotion to work. So communication is your key. A positive, a very high-toned communication. Put somebody that is very effervescent on your phone and just call and call. The thing you want to focus on is focus on those hygiene. Get your hygiene patients in immediately just to get the momentum started. Those patients will come back. They're having their teeth cleaned. There's fantastic social distancing with a patient. The way you can monitor your social distance is when they come in the office, get them in a damn chair. All of a sudden, they're not by anybody. Just have all the signage in your place. Look at the ADA toolkit. I think it will help you tremendously. At the end of the day, the launch of your practice is going to be up to you. Try to erase all the noise of COVID-19. Just get back to work. In any event, I look forward to seeing you. We'll be on the road pretty heavy for the next 3 to 4 months. So, like I said, love to see you. Just mark in the survey question if you'd like us to come. Then somebody will call you. We have a person that is accepting the calls and the emails. They'll call you and they'll get a scheduled day that is best for you to come. Okay, love you all. So glad that to see you. At least you can see me. I miss you all, and I hope to see you soon. Also fill the survey out on the next webinar, what you'd like to see, because I'll be doing these once a month. Okay, good luck to everybody. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.